Yeah, this video is about making salt and pepper shakers, and I couldn't think of a clever cold open, so here's a picture of salt and pepper. Okay, here we are on the bench. I've got 3 blanks here. We've got cherry, maple, and walnut. And these are a couple of blanks of offcuts that I glued up. Like I mentioned, you could use offcuts to do this. So you could either run the hole that way or run the hole this way and make it squat. But if you get just little chunks of offcuts, you can glue up blanks and use them that way. I'm not going to do those. We're going to use the cherry for this one to begin with. I mean, as you can see, both the walnut and the maple are actually glue ups. So I didn't have any single pieces large enough, but that'll work just fine. The cherry, I happen to have some 8/4 kicking around, and I'm just using it that way. So I just squared up, I milled up the 8/4, squared it, so it's the same dimensions this way and this way, which is just shy of 3/4 of an inch. Now, the exact dimension doesn't actually matter. You can use whatever you have. I'm going to talk about the dimensions of my stuff, but more importantly, I'm going to show you how I figure out how deep I want to drill down in to make the reservoir for the salt. I also have some corks, and I'm using cork stoppers in these just because it's cheap and convenient, not to be too blunt about it. So again, whatever size cork you use really doesn't matter. You're going to pick the size of the holes you drill based on the stuff that you have. I am going to do a take 2 here because I ran into some problems with take 1. Live and learn, I guess. And we're going to do this one with the walnut piece, not the cherry piece, because I actually need to thin the cherry down. You need to have a Forstner bit that is actually just a bit larger than the piece that you're using, and I do not for that. So now we're going to seat the cork in that, and that is just about perfect. You can see it's in there snugly, but there's plenty of cork above that to grab a hold with the fingers. It is just under 1/2 inch. So we're going to go with 1/2 inch for the depth that we need to do. And you'll see what that is. So I've marked the center of the block here. Oh, and the length of this block is set by the drill bit. So that's how long my bit can go. I could probably work it a little bit deeper, but I don't want to go much deeper than that. So that's how long I cut that block. And if you have, like I have here, extensions for the Forstner bits, you can actually go a bit deeper than that, but this is fine for this one. But before I drill this hole, which is where the going to be the hole where the salt goes in, I need to drill a wider hole for the access. And that we want to be just a bit bigger than the block itself. So I'm going to go get set up in the drill press. I'll get set up in the drill press and we'll go over there. So one neat trick for holding a small piece like this when you're doing something like the drill press, instead of trying to hold it with your fingers, you can mount it in one of these big wooden clamps that I've completely forgotten the name of. But they're very nice. So we need to go in with this, and we want to drill this about 1/2 inch deep into the wood. I've got the tail spot of my vernier caliper extended about 1/2 inch. You can see that there. We'll use that to check the depth. Okay, that's step 1 completed. As you could see, I was having a little trouble drilling through there, getting some smoke and some burn. I think that's because I'm drilling into end grain. I'm drilling into end grain, which is a lot tougher than long grain. So anyway, now that first hole is drilled, got the stop set right there, just under 2.5 inches. You can see there's the 2. That's the 1/4 inch mark right there. That's an 1/8 inch mark right there. And that's a 1/2 inch mark right there. So as I mentioned before, the whole length of this block is 2.5 inches. So what we want to do is line the tip of this drill bit in, make that level with these little feet right here, and then just run it down all the way till we get to the full depth stop. And that should land us roughly 1/8 of an inch from the edge from the other side of the wood. Okay, there we are. And if I have done my calculations correctly, there should be nothing poking through the other side. Ta-da! So to drill the holes for the salt, I found these little circle of pips online. I'm not going to use every little pip in there, but this will help me keep them straight. All right, so now I can use the cross on the paper to line up to the cross on the wood. That will be much better. Okay, now I can just drill these holes through, just lining it up manually. I think this will come, yep, it comes plenty far down. Whoops. Right, to make sure you've gone all the way through, you can just hold it up to the light. Okay, so here we are with this, and you can see I was a little off center with my ring there. You know, this hole drilled a lot more easily than the other hole drilled. So I think also the size of the bit makes a difference here. But we just stick the cork in there. You can see the cork is sitting below these feet. So it'll set down nicely on a flat surface. But you also got plenty of space to get your fingers in here, pry the cork out, fill it back up with salt when needs be. And that is the basic salt and pepper shaker. You do the same thing, except with the pepper, you'd make bigger holes and fewer of them because the pepper grains are larger. This just really needs to be sanded and finished now. I think you could use just about any food safe finish on this. I personally am not going to finish inside. I'm just going to leave that raw wood. If you did want to finish inside, I think you should probably do that before drilling these tiny little holes, because if you're using like a lacquer or something, it's going to just seal those right up. So you don't want to have to drill those twice. But there's more. I was thinking you could do some more interesting things with this. So let's go over to the table saw and try some experiments. So what I was thinking is I could put some decorative marks on this. And you can see it, the table saw is just barely poking up there. So let's do that. You can see there, that adds a nice little kind of decorative trim piece to the top. I really kind of like that. It gives it a little bit of character. You know, you could also like bevel or taper it. So let's go over to the bandsaw and try that. Okay, I'm going to switch to the cherry one that I was using because it wasn't coming out so well. And honestly, I think the way this is, the smaller size and the way I've got these cut in, I don't think trying to taper those is going to work all that well. But this is thick enough that we can do it. I don't have a taper jig, so I'm just going to have to freehand it, which always works out ever so well. Wow. I'm glad I didn't do it to the walnut one, because freehanding that went every bit as badly as I expected. Yeah, not great, but it's an idea. You know, if I set up a jig so I can mount it properly, so I can run it through with a little more control over the piece, that's another thing you can do. You could taper the sides. You could take a spoke shave to it and round things off. You could use a block plane on it if you want to plane the sides down. It's a lot of different approaches you could take here. You could use a router and route the edges to give them a shape, a round over, or even a cove or something like that. So a lot of things you can do, but I think that the basic idea is quite sound. I like it. It's simple. It's a nice way, like I said, to use up offcuts and scrap pieces. So all you have to do is glue together blocks like this, and you can mount them like that. You could do it like that, and you can make little shakers out of them. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one.